Magic Johnson's misfortune is that the world only let him to triumph. We recall the brightest smile in basketball, the no-look passes that destroyed every defense, and the 6'9" giant who, by himself, saved a dying league from bankruptcy, transforming basketball into a joyful religion and making every opponent of the 1980s bow down and call him Showtime. We recall 3 MVP honors, 5 championship rings, and the total dominator who destroyed everything in his path. When he found out he was HIV positive at the most radiant pinnacle of his life at age 32, we never saw the wound that lies underlying all that brightness. Because the court was the only place where life felt lighter than the sentence steadily consuming him from the inside out, he played basketball with an almost childlike enthusiasm. However, it was more difficult to find such happiness outside of the baseline. The man who had to drag himself home, kneel in front of his pregnant wife, and say the most heinous things was the icon who once made even his opponents bend in respect. "I might have brought death into this house, so please don't turn around if you want to go." The man who was stabbed in the back by his closest friend was also the legend that America once worshipped. In NBA locker rooms, Isaiah Thomas opted to whisper behind his back rather than stand next to him, and basketball has never fully revealed the narrative behind the most spectacular success in sports history. The world was much more brutal than any finals he had ever encountered. And now, the question of how a man gets up at 4 in the morning is hidden behind the 67-year-old face of the greatest basketball legend in history. The M takes his medication, counts his T cells, and silently battles the sickness of the century for 35 years without a single day off, a last buzzer, or an arena audience. Please subscribe to the channel and give Magic Johnson a like before we delve further to discover the true man who persevered through it all. The fourth child of Irvin Sr. and Christine Johnson, Irvin Johnson Jr. was born on August 14, 1959. There were no unexpected deaths or losses throughout his early years. His tragedy was deeper and more nuanced. It was the tragedy of a father who lived in the home but was not involved in his son's life. Irvin Sr. worked early in the morning till late in the afternoon on the General Motors assembly line. Then, when night fell on the city, he got into a garbage truck and drove around Lansing, earning every extra dollar he could to feed 7 people. He cherished his kids. He was an avid basketball fan. He devastated his own body every day to prevent the roof from collapsing because he loved his family so deeply. However, love cannot take the place of presence. Iran was raised in the shadow of a father he looked up to, but hardly had the opportunity to spend enough time with. Christine, the mother who Magic would later refer to as the steel pillar of everything he became, was the one who prevented the house from collapsing. When the father was too tired to do it, she established the family's rhythm. A tiny home, 7 kids, and a neighborhood where nobody was guaranteed a bright future. And Christine's love, discipline, and faith kept everything together. Basketball seemed to be the only way out of poverty in that world, strengthening its hold rather than a haven from suffering. Irvin played to win, to get away, to demonstrate that a Lansing child had the right to demand a different existence, and that the Johnson family's fate was not limited to the assembly line and the garbage truck. Irvin accepted a job sweeping floors in a 7-story building when he was a teenager. He dutifully and seriously mopped the first 6 floors in accordance with the principles of honest labor that his father had taught him. However, the child halted when he got to the 7th story, which is where the executive offices are located. No one saw him as he laid down the mop, entered the office, sat in the boss's leather chair, put his feet up on the desk, and pretended to be the CEO. However, 30 years later, Irvin Johnson Jr. was at the head of a $1 empire. $5 billion? Since he had always known the chair was his, the youngster on the 7th floor would grin. When HIV struck, that poor child's ambition, the fire that burned deep in his veins, would save him. After witnessing a high school game in which the Everett High School student scored 36 points, 18 rebounds, and 16 assists, numbers that many professional players never achieve in a single game throughout their careers, a local reporter called Fred Stabley Jr. gave him the moniker Magic. Irvin Johnson Jr. vanished after that evening. Magic moved to the front. Almost no one remembered that Irvin, the child who saw his father work 2 shifts a day and vowed he would never live like that, was still within that armor when the world called him Magic. When Magic and Everett High School won the Michigan State Championship in 1977, everyone in Lansing stood up to give their son a final farewell before he departed. Tragedy, determination, his father's sweat on the assembly line, his mother's steel hands preventing 7 children from plunging into the abyss, and the executive chair on the 7th floor that the mopping boy dared to sit in while no one was watching were all sources of Magic Johnson's growth. When the HIV sentence was imposed, that would become his most powerful tool and the only thing preventing his death. However, that same will would also give rise to the most perilous notion that he could overcome any obstacles, even temptation, and the boundaries of what was feasible. The 18-year-old freshman at Michigan State University in 1977 encountered 2 individuals who would forever change his life. One he would love, and the other he would need. Aretha Cookie Kelly was the first. "This is the woman I will marry," Magic declared to her and his parents after just 3 months of dating. It sounded like the thunder of an 18-year-old who was deeply in love. However, it would take 14 years to complete, be repeatedly deceived, and be canceled twice by Magic himself just before the wedding. Because Cookie discovered another girl wearing Magic's bathrobe in Magic's dorm room just 3 months after that unbreakable commitment. The student who vowed to love her forever was also the one who was unable to resist temptation. The first crack was that. Larry Bird was the second. He was compelled to carry the enemy's fate for the rest of his life, not a buddy or a lover. The most watched college basketball game in American television history was the 1979 NCAA Final between Michigan State and Bird's Indiana State. Michigan State thrashed the opposition 7-5-6-4 with to Magic's 24 points and 7 assists. However, from that point until the rest of their lives, each would be the single yardstick by which the other assessed himself. More significant than any number, Magic and Bird, Bird and Magic. Magic was chosen first by the Los Angeles Lakers in the 1979 NBA Draft. From the icy, bleak working-class city of Lansing to Los Angeles, Hollywood Sunset Boulevard, neon lights, wealth, celebrity, and a queue of stunning women. The 2 cities differed in more ways than merely geography. It was a warning that his life was going to fall apart. Light and darkness, glory and fall, all included within the same zip code. The Lakers took on the Philadelphia 76ers in Game 6 of the 1980 NBA Finals. The team's spirit and iconic center, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, was unable to participate due to a severe injury. The most bizarre choice in basketball history was made by coach Paul Westhead. Magic, a 20-year-old 6'9" rookie, should be placed at center, a position meant for Giants players who are 20 pounds bigger than him. History was what followed. Magic played every position on the court, scoring 42 points, grabbing 15 rebounds, and dishing out 7 assists as if the idea of position didn't apply to him. The championship was won by the Lakers. The youngster, 20, was named MVP of the finals. This was a first for anyone in NBA history, and no one has done it again after over 50 years. Magic got to know Kareem with the Lakers. Quiet and intelligent, Kareem avoided the media as if celebrity were something to be avoided. He read philosophy on airplanes while teammates played cards. The opposite was true with Magic. Radiant, receptive, and eager to embrace, smile, and be loved by everyone. Deep regard eventually replaced the tension caused by the disparity. However, it also revealed a magical truth that would eventually serve as both his strength and weakness. Like oxygen, Magic Johnson required love and admiration. When that need was focused on the court, it developed into exceptional leadership magnetism, the capacity to enthrall teammates, supporters, and an entire city. However, when directed outside of the courtroom, that need turned into a need to be gratified, validated, and relished. And regardless of the time of day or the repercussions, Los Angeles was prepared to provide it all. Irvin Johnson Jr. had entirely vanished inside Magic Johnson by the time he was 20. Wearing a championship ring, the child who washed the 7-story building now sits atop the sports world. However, Los Angeles offered him unrestricted temptation in addition to glory, freedom without restrictions, and the perilous notion that anything may be touched by a man named Magic. Magic Johnson saved basketball in addition to dominating it. The NBA was dying before Magic. The NBA Finals had to be televised at midnight on delayed tape because no network thought enough people would watch live due to the extremely poor television ratings. Numerous teams were deeply in the red. There were thousands of empty seats in arenas. American professional basketball was gradually becoming obsolete. He didn't toss a life raft when Magic showed up. He transformed the entire sinking